Hey, Year 12. So this is lesson 4, part 1, and we're going to go through displaying and describing numerical data. The previous lesson was about categorical data. Now we're going to focus on numerical. So until now, we've looked at frequency tables, bar graphs, segmented bar graphs. That's what we did in the previous lesson. And this has so far been for categorical data only. This lesson, we're only going to look at frequency and percentage tables for numerical data, as well as histograms for numerical data. So for discrete numerical data, I'll write that in. The process is the same for categorical data. So the number of brothers and sisters, siblings, reported by each of the 30 students in a year 11 class are as follows. All these answers here. You know, we've got 2 siblings, 3 siblings, 4, no siblings, and so on. Construct a frequency table for this data. So let's just count how many times, we've got 0. So let's cross off all the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And keep going that until you get all the way down to the bottom. Be very careful not to make any mistakes and count carefully. Double check all your numbers because you don't want to make a simple mistake. This is the amount of times, 0 siblings happen 6 times, 1 sibling happens 7, and so on. If we add up all these numbers, we should get a total of 30 students. So let's just double check. 6 plus 7 is 13, plus 6 is 19, plus 5 is 24, plus 3 is 28, plus 2 is 29, plus 1 is 30. And to work out the percentages, just like we did in the previous lesson, I'll just show you with 1 or 2 of them. With this one, it would be 5 out of 30 times 100, and that gets you an answer of 16.7%. And with this one here, 1 out of 30 students have 6 siblings, times that by 100, and that equals 3.3%. And just like we said in the previous lesson, don't just write the number 100 there because it should be 100, but double check because this is your way of checking to see if you've made any simple mistakes, which is always likely. 20, 43.3, 63.3, 63.3 plus 16.7, use my calculator, is 80, plus 10 is 90, plus 6.7 is 96.7, and then plus 3.3 is 100. So yes, we've done all that correct. Now I'll write in 100%. Don't be lazy, double check. So now we can answer some questions from this. What percentage of people have 3 or more siblings? Okay, so we want to look at 3 or more. We will look at 3 or more. That includes the 3. Okay, so we're going to look at percentage. So we're going to look at this number, this number, this number, and this number. So that should be 3 or more includes 3. Which means 16.7 plus 10 plus 6.7 and plus 3.3. That equals 36.7%. If you've done that all correctly. What is the total number of people who have between 2 and 5 siblings? So because it says inclusive, 2 and 5 included. So let's rub out all these highlights. We are now dealing with 2 and 5 included and everything in between. But they're not asking us about the percentage, they're asking us about the number of people or the number of students. So we're looking at these numbers here. Okay, so that means 6 plus 5 plus 3 plus 2, and that equals 16 people. What is the mode of this distribution? Now, the mode is the most popular number. The most popular number is those who have one sibling. Most popular is those who have one sibling. Okay, because 7 is the biggest number in terms of the frequency. Cool. So sometimes the variable can take a large range of values. So for example, if we did the same thing we did up here, but instead of asking people how many siblings they have, if we ask them how many or what's their age or a random group of people, you can get any answer from 0 years old to, maybe 120 years old. So rather than doing this all the time, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to your biggest answer, it's going to take forever. So if we asked age, that could be anywhere from like 0 to 120. Listing all of individual ages would take a very long time. So we need to group the data into intervals. Grouping intervals should be chosen according to the following rules. Each data value should be in an interval. The intervals should not overlap, and there should be no gaps between intervals. Choice of intervals can vary, but there are some guidelines. Usually no more than 15 groups. Even that's probably too much. Somewhere like 5 to 10 is probably ideal. And choose intervals with a width that's easy to interpret, such as groups of 5, groups of 10s, groups of 20s. So if we were to look at that age group, all the way from 0 to 120, we will make groups of 10. So the smallest age can be a 0. And you might think we're going to do 0 to 10, but no, because that is not groups of 10. We want to count 10 numbers, including the 0. So using your fingers, count with me. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is the first 10 numbers, which means the next 10 numbers would be 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and so on. Okay, so that's probably the trickiest part. Groups of 10 does not mean 0 to 10. Okay, if we're starting with 0. Groups of 20, same thing. 0 to 19, 20 to 39, 40 to 59, 60 to 79, and so on. Now, the one thing you need to know, very, very important, is that they do not overlap. Here it ends at 9 and starts with a 10. Here it ends with a 19 and starts with a 20. Here it ends with a 29 and starts with a 30. So make sure you are noticing that and that each of these groups are of equal interval. So there's 10 in this group, 10 in this group, 10 in this group, 10 in this group. And for the last one, groups of 5. 0 to 4 would be our first group of 5. Count with me. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the first 5 numbers. The next 5 numbers will be 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19, and so on. So, this is going to take a bit of time, but a group of 20 people were asked to record how many cups of coffee they drank in a particular week with the following results. Construct a table of this data showing the frequency count and percentage frequency. The first one I want you to make is with intervals of 5. Okay, so for the first group, actually groups of 10, sorry. First group would be from 0 to 9, then 10 to 19, then 20 to 39, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and 40 to 49. And then in your last row, put the word total. So let's do the first one together. How many belong to the 0 to 9 group? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 that belong here. And to do the percentage, we want to do, well, first of all, how many students do we have altogether? It says 20. Okay, I'll double check and count all these, but there is 20 there. So 20 should be at the bottom here. 10 out of 20 times 100 gives you 50%. I'll get you guys to pause me here and complete the rest of these notes. So counting the next group and so on. Okay, so now that you've unpaused me, hopefully you've got 10, 3, 3, 3, 1, and then your total is 20. Hopefully you got these percentages here. So before we put in the 100 in there, let's just double check to see if we're correct. 50, 65, 80, 95, and 100. Yep, cool. And you do need to show your full working out. Okay, so these ones should have 3 out of 20 times 100. 3 out of 20 times 100. 3 out of 20 times 100. And 1 out of 20 times 100. What happens if we do the same thing now, but instead of groups of 10, we're going to do groups of 5. So 0 to 4, 5 to 9, and so on. Okay, so these are the groups for intervals of 5. I'll get you to do the exact same thing again, except this time, now, we will use the groups of 5. So we're going to have different counts. So let's see, for 0 to 4, how many belong to that first group? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and 8 divided by 20 times 100 equals 40. I'm going to press pause, get you to press pause, and then complete the rest of this table. Okay, so hopefully your answers look something like this. Once we've completed this, now we want to look at histograms. So when the data is categorical, the appropriate display is a bar chart. However, when a graphical display of a frequency table for a numerical variable, we call this a histogram. Okay, so in other words, what we just had up here is a numerical display, is a frequency table of a numerical data, and we want to graphically display that information with what we're about to learn, a histogram. This is something that we've learnt about in previous years, but in a histogram, the frequency is shown on the vertical axis, just like a bar chart, and the values of the variable being displayed, so the numbers are being displayed on the horizontal axis. The height of the column gives the frequency, number or percentage, and each column corresponds to a data value or a data interval if the data is grouped. Now, what we're going to talk about here is how to do a histogram, but before we look at this section, let's just go straight into an example and we'll come back to this. So you can make a histogram from your frequency table. So the first thing I want you guys to do is I want you to rule up 2 lines, 2 straight lines. I'll try my best to keep this straight. And straight away I want you to put in frequency on the vertical axis. Okay, so if we're representing this information here, we are talking about siblings at the bottom. So we're going to write siblings at the bottom. So that way we know which columns, which axis relates to which. Now, our siblings data goes from 0 all the way to 6. Okay, so 0 all the way to 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this 0, we're going to call this 1, we're going to call this 2, and so on. But just to make sure this is perfect, what you actually want to do is you want to put your numbers just underneath that mark. So it should be more like this. Sorry if you have to rub that out and fix it up, but it should be looking like that, where the numbers are underneath the marks. Now, before we decide what we're going to do with the vertical axis, let's see how big is our biggest frequency. Our biggest frequency is 7 and our smallest is 1. So I think it's safe to just go up by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, on your piece of paper, make sure these lines are evenly spread apart. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many of these people have 0 siblings? 6. Okay, so straight away, I'm going to do almost like a bar chart straight up to 6. Now, the only difference is that they connect. They don't have any gaps. For one sibling, it goes all the way up to 7. So I'm just going to go straight up from here and go down. And then just keep going until you finish off. And it should look something like this. Cool. And this is what happens when we have our numerical data discrete, okay? Because we only have a limited number of values, 0 to 6, and we've got to count for each of them. Slightly different though when you have interval grouped data. Not too different, same sort of thing. So what we can do, let's straight away set up the two axes. At the bottom, this is all about height. So at the bottom, we're going to put height. And on the side, we're going to put frequency. Now, the little trick here when you have intervals is to only put the numbers on the left. Okay, these are the only numbers that should go down at the bottom on your horizontal axis. Okay, just here where it says height. So my first of those numbers is 170. So what I'm going to do is, because usually what happens is the 0 is just this point here. So I'm going to put a 0 here, and we're going to start from 170. Then our next number is going to be the next number that's underneath that, 175. Then the next number underneath it, which is 180, and so on. We're going to keep going up by 5s. 185, 190, 195, 200, and that's our, maybe we do one more. Okay, so you always do the last number plus one more. So let's go up to 205. Okay, so that way you can close it off, and you'll see why in a second. Now the frequency, our biggest number is 13, so I think it's fair to go up by, let's say, 5s. Okay, so this can be 5, 10, and 15. Probably be wise to put the little marks in between, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So our first interval of 170 to 174.9 has a count of 4. So we're just going to do from here all the way up to a 4. The next one is a count of 5. So we just go up just that little bit. Make sure we connect it now at those marks. There is a skill to this and it does take time, so be patient with it. The next one goes all the way up to a 13, so that should be about here. Then we have a 9. Make sure you use your ruler, line it up so it's perfectly in line. Then we have a 7. And a 1. And 2. And that is your histogram for discrete numbers and continuous numbers. It will take you a bit of time, but get into the habit of doing it perfectly with rulers, using the lines properly, spacing them out evenly, and you shouldn't have a problem. It's really, really important to not forget to put these titles because that's what you're marked on. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to do all this on a calculator. So can we get our calculators open? Okay, so once you've got your calculator open, start a new document and go straight to lists and spreadsheets. Now, in this example, usually I have the numbers here that you can put in, but for some reason I didn't put them there. What we will do though is we will put in the numbers from the previous example, from example 3. So what I want you to do, first things first, is put in all these numbers about the coffee. So starting with 2, 0, 9, and going all the way down until you put the very last number. Okay, once you have done that, make sure that you've got 20 numbers because that's what this question says. It's about 20 people. And then scroll your numbers back to the very top. Get in the habit of going all the way back to the top. Okay, so let's now go to these calculator instructions. Now, this example says call this marks because that's what the example was about, but we'll call this coffee. Okay, so you go up to the top one and call it coffee. Hopefully you remember this from year 11 general maths. Okay, then step 3, it says press Control I and select data and statistics. So press Control I and then press data and statistics. What you then want to do is move your mouse or press tab and click to enter to add variable at the bottom here and then click coffee. Then because you want a histogram, you want to make a histogram, so you've nearly done all the work. Press menu, press plot type, then press histogram. That should get you a histogram that looks something like this. But because we want to maybe adjust this, maybe we want to adjust the intervals. Here we have intervals of 5. I don't think I really like having an interval of 5. Maybe I want to have an interval of 10. So what we can do before we do that is let's just move your cursor around actually and just to the top of it, and you can see here that the intervals actually aren't of 5, they're of 2. So this first interval is, as you can see here, between 0 and 2. This is the next one, between 2 and 4, between 4 and 6, between 8 and 10, and so on. So maybe I don't like that. Maybe we're going to change the intervals. So how do we do that? We press menu. This is, as you can see here on the left from step 2. Press menu, plot properties, histogram properties, bin settings, equal bin width. And we want to change the bin width. Maybe instead of going to 2 as a width, maybe let's go to 5 as a width. and alignment means where it starts from. So let's start it from 0. We press OK, and you'll see now that the histogram makes a bit more sense now. It's in groups of 5. Okay, but you notice that you can't really see the full thing, so you want to zoom out a little bit. So you want to press Menu, Window Zoom, and zoom out. Then you can just click once, and hopefully that should be enough to show you the whole bigger picture. If you're too far zoomed out, you can zoom back in, or you can zoom even better with data. Now, what does that do? That just shows you everything. It perfectly brings you to where you need to be. We probably didn't even need to zoom out to begin with. We could have just clicked the data straight away. And then if we want to, finally, this is just a frequency, but if we wanted the percentage frequency, what do? We press these buttons here. So Menu, Plot Properties, Histogram Properties, Histogram Scale, and then Percent. And you'll notice that the look of it doesn't really change, but the percentages do. So now I can see that this here has a percentage of 40%. You can even see that at the top of your screen. This one has a percentage of 10, 10, 5, 10, and so on. Because you are going to get questions in this lesson asking you to sort of analyze the different widths and what changes about it. So hopefully that helps you with this lesson. You can then move on to accessing the questions, and the questions are always in your booklet, and there's only 4 of them. So lucky for you. Thank you. Have a good day.